Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yesterday, the NBA games were not super close, but still some fun basketball being played. The Lakers bounced back, so did the Bucks, but not in as big a way as the Lakers, obviously. And we'll get to that in a bit, but we're going to start off with Heat Pacers today. And with that game, it all started with Duncan Robinson. He came into the game and started off by hitting three threes, and I think that was very key for the Heat because he ended up knocking down 7 out of 8 of his trays in that game. And I think the Pacers gave him some open looks to start off the game, and that allowed him to get hot and get going. And that was an error that they could not afford to make. And in the next couple games, they will not be able to make that same mistake because once Duncan got hot, he was hitting every look he got, and he's obviously not afraid to shoot it. So that was a key in the game yesterday. He had 24, was the team leader in scoring, maybe game leader. Yesterday I thought Oladipo looked really good. He looks to be back to his old shifty self, and I'm a big fan of his. I love the way he plays. There's no one else who plays in quite the same way he does, so it's good to see him healthy. And although I am obviously a Bucks fan, and the Pacers are a division rival, it's still really good to see him healthy and playing well as a fan of basketball because there's no one else like him, and he's fun to watch play. So, yeah, good to see him back and healthy, especially after that injury scare in Game 1. Miami's defense, though, was just outstanding. They very much dictate the shot that they want their opponent to take. They give up the look they want you to get, and the Pacers were unable to hit those difficult shots yesterday. So that's a big part of why the Heat were able to win. They held the Pacers to 100 points. So even though the Heat didn't necessarily look the greatest on offense, they were still able to come away with a victory because of how strong their defense was. Coming off the bench for the Heat yesterday, I'm very interested in what their rotation is looking like because you've got Kendrick Nunn usually starting and Dragic coming off the bench as the backup point guard and sixth man. But with Kendrick Nunn looking downright unplayable in the seeding games, it looks like Spoelstra is uncomfortable giving him playoff minutes as an undrafted rookie. So Dragic has been inserted into the starting lineup, and Tyler Hero is now coming off the bench and running a lot of point for the Heat. And that's been, I've seen some really good things from him in that role. His passing looks pretty good. He's able to find the open man and make some difficult passes, which I've been impressed with because coming out of high school and college, I always just thought of him as a shooter. So to see the way he's able to penetrate, find the open man, get assists, looks like maybe this is a role he'll be capable of playing. Maybe if he starts the game alongside a true point guard, and then he can also play a couple minutes per game out at the 1. And his defense also looked really good yesterday. They usually matched him up on Oladipo, I'm pretty sure, when he was in, and he moves his feet really well. He keeps his man in front, and he's got that long wingspan that stops shooters from getting open looks. So I really like this guy, although I'm kind of obligated to because of my friend that is very, very high on him and has been ever since Hero's freshman year of high school. So I think that he's got a lot of potential, and I'm very impressed with the way he's playing right now. Yesterday, his shot wasn't falling, but you can just tell with that beautiful form, it's flawless. And even when it's not going in, you still feel like it's a great shot every time he's the one taking an open look. And he hit a few shots in the second half that were pretty big, gave the Heat the momentum back after kind of answering threes from the Pacers. So yeah, Tyler Hero might I know this might be a bit of a hot take, but he might be the most valuable young player on that team over Bam. Even though Bam was an all-star, I think Hero probably has a higher ceiling, and he plays a far more important position. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that team down the line. I think that they've got a lot of good young players in those two, Duncan Robinson. I'm not the biggest Kendrick Nunn fan because of some of the off-court stuff he's had in his past and his reluctance to kind of talk about it, and I think that's a bit of a problem. But on the court, Kendrick Nunn seems to be a good player. He just is going through some struggles right now. So, yeah, the Heat going forward have a lot of promise. And obviously right now, too, with Jimmy Butler as a star leading the way, I think he's kind of fallen underrated. I mean, it's pretty incredible how strong this team is with him as their leader. A lot of people doubted him for making this decision, but he looks like a really great number one option for this team. And obviously he does what we've always known him to do. He gets to the line. He had a couple of problems finishing easy shots yesterday, but I don't think that's going to be too big of a problem because obviously you would assume that he'll be hitting those shots most of the time. And then his defense obviously is incredible. He did a really good job on TJ Warren again yesterday. TJ got a few buckets, but nothing too outstanding. And with TJ Warren, it's incredible how far he's come on defense. With the Suns, he just didn't give any effort, and he was a huge minus on that end of the floor. But this year with the Pacers, I noticed this a ton yesterday, but guarding Jimmy Butler, he looked really good. He looks like a very, maybe above average perimeter defender. And that's what they're going to need from him because he's the guy that's going to match up with the top wing on the other team, because Oladipo is a great defender as well, but he has a hard time on some wings because he's only about 6'3", 6'4", I believe. So if he were a bit taller, obviously he'd be a perfect matchup for big wings. But as of now, I think TJ Warren is capable of taking on those matchups, and he's doing a good job of it. After the first game, I said that I thought the big matchup in this series was Miles Turner versus Bam Adebayo, or as Kendrick Perkins says, Bam Adebayo, which made me laugh very hard hearing him say that on First Take. But yesterday, Bam was really quiet, and I thought Miles Turner had a great game. He blocked a bunch of shots, he was grabbing rebounds, and most importantly for them, he was spacing the floor and knocking down open looks. But the Pacers were still unable to win, so I think that that's a troubling sign for them moving forward. But the main reason they weren't able to win was Goran Dragic. That guy heated up down the stretch in the second half, hit all the big shots that the Heat needed him to, and was a very clutch contributor for them. And I'm very happy, if I'm the coach, to have the ball in his hands down the stretch, because he seems like a very clutch player and a very good player to begin with. I mean, he creates well for that offense. He's a good point guard. And his free agency is another one that's going to be interesting this offseason. I'm sure there will be a market for him right around the $15 million range. Maybe a little less than Van Vliet because he's older. But he's a really good player, and I'm excited to see what he can do with this Heat team. Obviously, he's not the best player. Probably the third best player, I'd say, behind Jimmy and Bam. But he's very important to their team as their only true point guard in the rotation right now. So, yeah, good game for the Heat yesterday. And we'll see if the Pacers can cut the Heat lead to 2-1 in Game 3 on Saturday. Rockets Thunder, I didn't get to watch that game. But from what I saw in the box score and the highlights, Eric Gordon and James Harden both really, really struggled. I think Eric Gordon went 0 for 10 from 3, and the Rockets still won. And at this point, with Gordon and Harden struggling, who are probably the two best players they're able to put on the court right now, the two best offensive players, at least. And Westbrook out, I don't know. The Thunder really have an uphill climb for them in this series now, especially because the Rockets are going to be able to let Westbrook recover a bit more and come back in after a couple more games than you would think, because at this point, you would think the Thunder would have taken one of the 2 games without Westbrook playing, so definitely a troubling sign for them. And another troubling sign for them is Jeff Green. He played 37 minutes yesterday. He was plus 13 in those 37 minutes, and he is been a really good scorer for them. And outside of Harden and Gordon, he probably is the biggest threat to get to the rim on that team with Westbrook out. So they need him to continue to step up. Austin Rivers also hit some big shots yesterday. PJ Tucker did what he always does, sit in the corner and knock down shots when he's open. Daniel House and Robert Covington also did well as 3-and-D wings, as they always do, play their role, knock down open looks, and play good defense. For the Thunder, it was really good to see Shea bounce back in the first game. I think he must have gone to that movie that came out called Invisible Man, because he did not do anything in Game 1. And in Game 2, he bounced back really strong. He had 31 points, and they're going to need that from him if they're going to get back into this series. Chris Paul struggled again. I didn't watch the game, and I didn't see too many lowlights of what was going on with him. I just saw that he didn't play the best, wasn't efficient from the field, had a very negative plus-minus. So they'll need him to play better. And is it possible that in this series, Nerlens Noel is a better option at the 5 than Steven Adams? Because I noticed that in Nerlens Noel's minutes, the Thunder played pretty well, and they had a pretty solid plus. So that could be interesting down the line. If I think yesterday Adams played 30 minutes, Noel played 18. Could that get closer to 24-24? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens. And the Rockets did say that they're going to be careful with Westbrook and rushing him back. Bucks Magic. Bucks won. And they turned it up, especially in that first quarter where they only allowed 13 points. So they needed that kind of defense because they didn't look good at all defensively in Game 1. So in that first quarter especially, Mike Budenholzer, his defensive philosophy really paid off, unlike the first game. The Magic shots weren't falling. They shot 21% from 3 for the whole game, which obviously is not going to get it done against the Bucks because they dare you to shoot threes just as much as any other team out there. I think they're second in the league in 3-point attempts allowed, behind the Raptors. And they also denied points in the paint. I think the Magic only had 2 points in the paint about halfway through the second quarter. So Budenholzer's defensive philosophy really paid off yesterday, but for the Bucks to reach their ceiling as a championship contender, they need Chris Middleton to pick it up. I mean, come on. He was 1 for 8 yesterday with 2 points and 4 turnovers. That's not going to get it done for the Bucks. And obviously they're playing the Orlando Magic, so they don't necessarily need him to be on his A game right now. But in the upcoming series against the Heat, that team makes me really nervous. And they're going to need to be firing on all cylinders to take care of business there. So they need Middleton to step up. However, in Middleton's kind of absence because of how poorly he played, Bledsoe played really well. His defense is obviously incredible. Always has been. He's a pit bull. I think he is deserving of second team all defense this year at one of the guard spots because it'll probably be Smart on the first team. I'm probably not thinking of Ben Simmons on the first team at the 2 guard spots. But then I think it could be any of like Kyle Lowry, Bledsoe. There's probably a couple guys that are slipping my mind right now, but I think he should get second team all defense because this is a historically great defensive team. So obviously that was great to see him playing that defense. But yesterday he did a great job creating shots. He was getting to the rim in a similar way to Giannis. Obviously, it's not the same because he's a little guy and Giannis is getting to the rim with those big, long steps. But with Bledsoe, it's more off of his quickness. So that's key for the Bucks because in Game 1 they struggled to create offense when it wasn't all running through Giannis. So they need a secondary playmaker, and if Middleton's off his game, Bledsoe looks like he's ready to step into that role. And I know we've seen playoff Bledsoe in the past, but remember people were saying playoff Kyle Lowry was a thing? Well, yesterday he proved them wrong on that. Or last year, excuse me. He proved them wrong on that. So hopefully Bledsoe can do the same thing this year. And with Middleton being off his game yesterday, there were some other wings off the bench that really stepped up for the Bucks. Pat Connaughton especially played huge minutes, was an outstanding player for the Bucks, was knocking down threes. He always has brought it defense. He brings hustle, and if we're going to get valuable minutes from him, that's very, very important because he's a big cog in our rotation. Korver looked good too. He was hitting threes. Obviously, his defense was as bad as always, but what more can you expect? He's an old man. And my boy Dante, his minutes got cut a little bit. He only played 11 minutes last night after averaging 20 plus during the regular season, probably due to his struggles in the bubble thus far, which is a little disappointing to me because I think he's got all-star potential, and I'm going to keep harping on that because I think that he might be the second most valuable asset that the Bucks have right now. So, obviously behind Giannis, I think that he's going to be really good, and I'm looking forward to see where his career goes, and I hope that we can keep him in Milwaukee. But this year, Connaughton just seems to be a better player at that two guard off the bench, so I'm not sure if we'll see Dante's minutes get cut even further, but Connaughton and Korver were great contributors last night, and Dante had 11 points, I believe. So, yeah, those three guys can keep contributing and keep playing well. That's important if Middleton's going to struggle, and may allow the Bucks to still triumph over the Heat in the next series. But against the Raptors, I'm very nervous at this point. The ball movement looked really good yesterday. I can't believe yesterday I said that the Jazz are the best passing team in the NBA because I forgot about my hometown team in Milwaukee because yesterday the ball movement was outstanding. Off penetrations, we had great ball reversals. We'd have Bledsoe get to the rim, kick it out to George Hill. George Hill would swing it to Lopez, and Lopez would have a great look. And Lopez really bounced back yesterday after a big struggle in Game 1. He went 8 for 12 with 20 points, I believe. So that's the kind of production we need from him because on offense, when he's getting buckets for us, that changes the dynamic of this team. Finally, we'll talk about the Blazers-Lakers game, and then we'll wrap it up. I know that the last couple days these have been running a little long, so I'm going to try to keep it close to 25 minutes today. But AD has really, really stepped up in Game 2. He really stepped up. He kind of just did whatever he wanted in the low post. He was getting all sorts of buckets for the Lakers, especially in the first half. In the second half, he was able to take the gas off the pedal a little bit because of the huge lead they had built up. But this is the kind of stuff that the Lakers are going to need from Anthony Davis in order to make them a championship contender. Him playing like a superstar really raises their championship ceiling. And another thing that raises their championship ceiling is a guy by the name of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And I was kind of hating on this guy after Game 1, but last night he was knocking down threes. And that's what they need from him because there's not a whole lot of shooting on this team. Danny Green's been struggling, and he's really the only knockdown shooter. But KCP went 4 for 6 from 3 yesterday for 16 points in only 22 minutes. So if he's knocking down shots like that, and it changes the dynamic of the team because it gives them a real shot at making this championship run. LeBron just manhandled Gary Trent in those minutes he was in. I think that the Blazers might need to stagger Melo's minutes along with so that he's on the court at the same time as LeBron all the time, because Gary Trent was not getting it done. LeBron realized he could just take Gary Trent in the post and bully ball him, and he did that on multiple occasions yesterday. So, yeah, Gary Trent on LeBron James, obviously that's not great. So, LeBron also struggled on defense a little bit in the first half, and obviously last night it didn't matter that much, but Melo was able to get some buckets against LeBron, which I was impressed with on Melo's end, but I also think LeBron still needs to take another step on his defensive intensity and ratchet it up a bit. But obviously it didn't matter much last night because the Lakers were in control of that game from the tip. They ran 80 at the 5 a lot more, which I thought was good because it creates matchup problems for the Blazers. I know that I said that Nurkic was probably capable of matching up with one of the wings, but I was wrong. When he was on Kuzma, Kuzma looked pretty good. And I'm not a big fan of Kuzma either, but I don't know. Blazers didn't look great last night. They looked tired. They weren't hitting their perimeter shots, and they were playing poor defense. So, I don't know. The Lakers looked really good. I hope the Blazers can bounce back. Dame's injury might be very troublesome if it affects his shooting. I don't know how much of an effect a sprained thumb has, but it'll be interesting to see. We know that he's not sitting out of Game 3, though, because when asked about it, he had a very specific quote. He said, "Oh, I'm playing." So, if I'm a Blazers fan, I'm not super worried because obviously every team has their off nights, and they still held the Lakers to 111 points. So, yeah, a pretty fun day of basketball yesterday. Like I said, games weren't the closest, but still a fun day. And today, looking forward to some Game 3s. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you again very, very soon. Oh, expect a second upload today with some draft lottery talk. I'm not sure if that'll be up before or after this one, but just be ready for it.